Interactive Lesson 1.9, Rhetorical Choices. When we analyze the rhetoric of a text, we're examining what a writer does to achieve their purpose and why they do it this way. We're essentially looking for the different choices that a writer makes. A rhetorical choice is just anything a writer does to persuade. We sometimes call these rhetorical strategies, but essentially it's just any rhetorical means to a rhetorical end. To learn how to identify rhetorical choices in a text, you must first understand the different means of persuasion, that is, the different elements that all writers draw from to make their ideas persuasive. Back in the 4th century BCE, Aristotle categorized 3 different means whereby persuasion is achieved. He said that persuasion was achieved through the reasonableness of the text, through the character of the writer, and through the emotional disposition of the audience. Everything persuasive, he says, that a writer says, will always persuade in one or more of these ways. Not much has changed since Aristotle first wrote that, except that these days we usually refer to the 3 means of persuasion as the 3 appeals, or the 3 rhetorical appeals. Logos, which is persuasion through the reasonableness of the text, ethos, which is persuasion through the character of the writer, and pathos, which is persuasion through the emotional disposition of the audience. Warning: the terms logos, ethos, and pathos are banned from your writing in this class. The reason for that is that inexperienced writers often use these terms in place of detailed explanation, which makes their analysis vague or otherwise unclear. Also, a lot of students have learned the wrong meanings of these terms, and they carry their misunderstandings into their analyses, which makes their analyses even more confusing. Instead of using those terms, you must discuss how a particular idea in a text persuades, whether it's through arguing some logical reasoning, through characterizing the writer in some fashion, or through stirring specific emotions in the audience. Use phrasing like this in place of the terms ethos, logos, and pathos. Let's look now at some examples of the 3 means of persuasion in action, and we'll start with Queen Elizabeth's speech to the troops at Tilbury. At the end of her speech, the Queen says this: "Not doubting but by your obedience to my general, by your concord in the camp, and by your valor in the field, we shall shortly have a famous victory over those enemies of my God, of my kingdom, and of my people." In this statement, she's persuading through the reasonableness of the text, because she's arguing that if the soldiers do all of these things, then logically they will have a victory. This logical reasoning is designed to make the audience more likely to be persuaded by her message. Another example comes from the beginning of the speech, when she says, "I have always so behaved myself that, under God, I have placed my chiefest strength and safeguard in the loyal hearts and goodwill of my subjects. And therefore I am come amongst you, as you see, at this time, not for my recreation and disport, but being resolved in the midst and heat of the battle to live and die amongst you all." This is an example of persuading through the character of the writer, because the Queen is characterizing herself as trusting and loyal to the soldiers. By appearing to possess these qualities, the Queen is trying to make her audience more likely to be persuaded by her message. Another example comes from the middle of the speech, when she says, "I know I have the body of but a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too. And think foul scorn that Parma or Spain or any prince of Europe should dare to invade the borders of my realm." Here we have an example of persuading through the emotional disposition of the audience. The Queen here is attempting to stir indignation or anger in the audience toward Spain and toward the Duke of Parma for their part in attacking England. You could also say that she's attempting to stir patriotism for England, although this is an emotion that she doesn't focus on quite as much with this statement. But by making her audience feel both anger toward the enemy and some patriotism for their homeland, that again is going to place them in the right frame of mind to be more persuaded by her message. You may have noticed that some of my examples persuade through multiple means, and they do. Oftentimes a single sentence can persuade on multiple levels. For instance, let's look again at her final line of the speech when she says, "Not doubting, but by your obedience to my general, by your concord in the blah, blah, blah." We can say that this does persuade through argumentation. It persuades through the reasonableness of the text because she is arguing that the soldiers will have victory because they will do those things. But it also persuades through the character of the speaker. Look at the last three parallel phrases there, "of my God, of my kingdom, and of my people." That deliberately characterizes her as a powerful sovereign, worthy of respect. And so it presents her in a certain light to the audience. We could also say that this line persuades through the emotions of the audience. Look how it starts off. "Not doubting, but by your obedience," meaning I have no doubt that you will be obedient. That assumes that the soldiers will do all of these things, which is a form of flattery, and it's designed to make them feel confident in themselves. Now it's your turn to practice. Respond to the following quick write question reflectively and informally. The purpose is just to get some complete ideas on the page.